Thank you. Good evening. We've already called the meeting to order before going into executive session. Now we're reconvening an open session this evening. And we'll be starting with welcome to visitors and opportunity for public participation. But before we start that, I would just like to make a brief statement in order to explain a bit more about public participation. I think sometimes it's a little bit confusing for people to understand exactly how it's supposed to work, and I'm hoping that will help. The public is welcome to make comments or read prepared statements during this portion of the meeting. We ask that these be limited to about 3 minutes. We're happy to receive any written statements that you may have as well. Please understand that criticisms of individual staff members are not allowed during this time, but should you wish to file a complaint about an individual, we do have a process for receiving and considering these. Also, the committee does not respond directly to public comments or engage in verbal exchanges during this time. Our policy is to listen to your statement or question at the moment and then either provide you with a response to your inquiry after it has been looked into or make your topic a future agenda item so that more information can be provided to everyone. So I'm hoping that'll help just a little bit. Yes?
We can also ask clarifying questions, correct?
If there's a clarifying question, you may ask it through me. Yes, it says through the chair. That's great. Thank you for that. So, welcome. Nice to see you. Is there anyone who would like to make a statement or ask a question? Please come up to where the microphone is. And maybe identify yourself first so we know who you are.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Megan Yabrowski, but while I worked with the school district, my name was Miss Finn Jr. I would like to start by stating I know after we leave, you are deep in the meeting. One of you may state that you have no control over what happens in the schools, that you are just here for budgetary reasons. I can assure you that this is not the case. As a tax-paying electing person living in Turners Falls, I am pleading for you to hear what is brought to you in these public sessions. Please do not assume someone is taking care of the issue because I can confirm they are not. In most cases, this is the only way for you and the public to hear what is really going on in our schools.
Excuse me, I'm sorry to interrupt. Can we just get you to speak a little louder?
Yes, I can
sorry.
try.
Thank you.
The microphone makes it louder on the TV, but in the room it doesn't amplify your voice.
I'll try and look online.
Sorry.
Public speaking 101. I would like to read to you what the public is told the school committee is responsible for. I would like to say these words are quoted from the DESE website. The school committee established educational goals and policies for the schools in the district consistent with the requirements of law and statewide goals and standards established by Board of Education. The school committee's status as the employer is for collective bargaining purposes. The school committee is responsible for appointing personnel to the following positions. Superintendent. The school committee has power to select and terminate the superintendent and to establish his or her compensation. School business administrator, administrator of special education, school physicians and registered nurses, supervisors of attendance and legal counsel all fall under their responsibilities. That is what I have understood this is for. Now with that stated, I would like to tell you my personal story. I was employed by Gil Montague from 2016 through 2019. I worked in the middle school therapeutic classroom for a bulk of that time, but was also assigned to life skills classrooms at a previous time of employment and worked as a substitute in the middle school and high school for a substantial amount of time. When I first moved back from Connecticut in 2015, I was living in Greenfield and chose to school choice my then 7-year-old into the 2nd grade at Sheffield Elementary. I trusted them with my son who was suffering from traumatic events during my separation from his dad. I had worked in the district before moving to Connecticut and felt that it would be the best environment for him to recover. With the exception of Kevin White, my son was further traumatized by the school, peers, and his teacher. The following year, I switched him to the Greenfield School District, where he has found the support and welcoming nature he needed. I say a specific name because he didn't have my son on his caseload, but he took the time to make sure that my son had support and that I was also in the loop on what was happening with my son. Not only was this new district sensitive to my son's trauma and the difficulties of newly single motherhood, but worked with me on how to set firm boundaries that would set my son up for success. I do not find these beliefs were in place while my son attended the Gil Montague School District. I also know from being an employee at the middle school level that my son would not be supported by administration with his trauma background. I have seen firsthand behaviors that my son struggled with be ignored, praised, and even rewarded just to get the behavior to stop. Nowhere in sight were there any strategy buildings on how the student could manage their own disabilities. Students who physically assault other students are being rewarded, while the students who are being assaulted are being told to deal with it. I do not think this is the environment I want my son to grow up in. My son and I moved to Turner's Falls in the spring of 2017. When I found out that Greenfield might not be able to take him on for school choice, I was in a panic. I was so worried my child would have to come back to this district. His dad and I fought very hard to make sure my son stayed in the Greenfield system, even contacting his father's lawyer to figure out how we could keep him there. I would like to take a moment to also point out that my neighbors also school choice their children to the Greenfield system due to the understanding that they have more support there and a concern of racial profiling. I understand that you have asked people working in the district to go through the chain of command. I ask you to believe me when I tell you I, along with other employees, have done just this, and the issues seem to vanish after we leave the Office of Administration. I would like you to know that I have never been asked by administration or anyone else why I chose to school choice my child to a different district during the recent investigations into some questionable situations coming from the schools. The district knew that I school choiced my son. Please note, I'm no longer employed by the Gil-Montague Regional School District. After several months of what I and many others would determine as harassment by administration with no support, I left the district for my dream job working with dogs. I thought I could walk away and just let these past few years go as just not my path. But after some of the baffling accounts coming from the district, I can't stay quiet any longer. I feel enough is enough. I'm more than willing to speak privately or at any forum to the school committee members who want to know how the schools are being run from the inside and how the great divide of 2017-18 school year was handled so poorly by administration that we still feel the aftershocks. The administration might attempt to show you my personnel file to counter my words to you, to shed me in some questionable light so my words hold less weight even if they are the truth. I assure you that this is illegal to do, but I also added rebuttal letters to any letter put in my file by the administration. I feel the truth needs to come out about this district and those who are in charge of it before they try to take over another school system. Thank you for your time and thank you for listening.
Need a copy of that?
Yes.
Yes, I can get a copy of it.
Yeah.
Good evening. My name is Laurie White. I currently teach 4th grade at Sheffield Elementary. I moved from Birmingham, Alabama after being hired at Sheffield 2 years ago. I love living in the neighborhood that I teach in. I'm able to attend ball games, choral events, dances, and when I walk my dog, it gives me the chance to get to know families in town. My colleagues at Sheffield have been so welcoming since I arrived, helping me navigate a new district in a new state. The children and families have made an impact on my life. I'm telling you this because at this point, it's not about me. It's about the district that I live in. It's about the teachers that I admire and the students and families that I love. It's about justice. I have a packet for you. The copier broke down, so I don't have enough for everybody, but I can email it to you later this evening. Would anybody like to have one? I think I have 6.
Should we have copies made first, maybe, by Sabrina for everyone? You're welcome. If you can give one to Sabrina before you run
Sure.
out, then she could make copies for other folks. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sabrina. I'm sorry I don't have enough.
That's all right.
But she can make copies.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
To whom may concern, Miss White is the best teacher. You may think that Miss White is not doing her job, but she really is. So if she leaves our school, we won't be the same.
Can you speak a little louder?
Our school won't be the same. Miss White has taught us decimals, fraction, multiplication, and division. Miss White made me feel safe and loved at school. Miss White taught us about segregation and integration. When we were behind on our work, she got us caught up. We have learned a lot this year. Next year's fourth graders won't get the same love and support if Miss White isn't there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Who they are.
I'm
before
sorry,
they
yes,
speak.
if you could tell us who you are, then we'd,
I'm Autumn Ryan.
thank you. Autumn Ryan.
I am Michelle, and this is Dakota and Maddie. Maddie will be venturing out to middle school this fall, and Dakota is a student at Sheffield. And they wrote letters, and I'm just going to read them for them. This one's from Dakota. I want Miss White as a teacher this fall. Miss White lives close to our home, so she brings her dog Joey on a walk to visit us. Miss White is friendly to our whole family. Miss White gives us a hug every afternoon each day. Miss White is very funny, especially with me, because I make her laugh. Miss White shares with us. She gives us loot coins for the craft store. She went to Peru and brought me home a wooden instrument. I really, really hope I get to experience her class this fall like my sister did. I love Miss White, from Dakota. And this is from Maddie. I had Miss White as a fourth grade teacher. I knew when I first walked into her class it was going to be a good year. Her class felt so comfy and homey. Every Friday we would start a new project. It was a really good experience because we would learn something new every week. One of my favorite projects was the map project. I liked it because we learned about our country. She chose our group, but we got to choose what route we took through the country. We learned a lot about Alabama, Miss White's hometown, and her background. In the summer, she let me and another student decorate her classroom for the next year. She liked the way we set it up. She took us to Lou, a craft store in our town, and she gave the whole class loot coins to spend. In the summer, she gave me a Chromebook so I could use it to do the things we learned in our school. I really enjoyed it. I really enjoy her class. Fourth grade was the best, most fun, and inspiring year at Sheffield. Because I'm going into middle school, I will miss giving her hugs every day. I will miss the only person that made me feel safe and comfortable at Sheffield. I am hoping throughout summer I will still be able to see her. She has always cared for her students and their learning. I love you, Miss White. And that's from them, but I would also like to say something in regards to Miss White and other things. Maddie had a tough year, third grade and second grade at Sheffield, bullying wise, and I went to the teacher first, I went to the guidance counselor, to the principal, and nothing was ever done with Maddie at all. In fourth grade, I didn't have to go above and beyond because Miss White always made sure Maddie was safe all the time. This year we're back to the bullying, and we're back to not wanting to go to school, not feeling comfortable, and there's nothing I can do. Her venturing off into middle school doesn't bring me safety as a parent. The transition to a different district is really hard on her socially. I'm undecided what I'm gonna do, but I think that fourth grade was her best year, and definitely have to give a round of applause to Ms. White because of the safety issues. And that's all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Henderson Bubalat. I am Autumn's parent. I just want to take a second to say something regarding Miss White and Autumn's experience in the Guild Montague Regional School District in general. She is my second child to go through the system. My first one skated through pretty easy until middle school. Autumn, not so much. She had a pretty rough start right from kindergarten. Very inconsistent teachers. I think she's had 3 teachers at this point that have left halfway through the school year. And for a child that had a really difficult start at the beginning of life, that is so difficult. She struggled with structure and consistency her entire life, and then the broken school system does not help. Above and beyond that, I have not found many teachers in this district who are prepared or even willing to be educated on how to work with somebody who doesn't fit in the box. The box is the sit down, be quiet, and listen box. Neither one of my kids fit in that box. And I've had some really great teachers in the Sheffield district with my first child that actually helped him get through and warned me going forward about the next schools in the district. And what she said to me was exactly what we experienced. Completely, it was a nightmare. I couldn't get my first kid out of this district fast enough. Autumn, believe it or not, I have school choiced her into the Gil-Montague Regional School District, even though we've moved out of the area. I did that because of a really phenomenal special education teacher that Gil-Montague had that they no longer do. He is the only reason Autumn is still in this district. That and the teacher she had last year. Autumn made I can't even tell you the biggest turnaround in school because of that special ed teacher, her teacher last year, and then we come into 4th grade. Miss White was recommended by that special education teacher. He was very clear that given Autumn's specific needs, she needed to be with Miss White. This special ed teacher, like I said, turned Autumn's school experience around, and I trusted what he said, and I don't regret it for a second. Autumn would fake being well to get to school. My other one will fake being sick to get out of school. Not this kid. This kid wants to be with Miss White every single day she can be. All weekend long, that was her top priority. Can we text Miss White, see how she is? Can we text her to see how she's doing? She is more, I would say, more than a teacher to Autumn. She's definitely a role model, and Autumn shares a passion for her like no other. So just wanted to say that piece, and I hope to see Miss White around. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Adam Aja. I have twin 11-year-old daughters in Sheffield Elementary School, and I'm going to read you a letter. My daughter couldn't be here tonight, so I'm going to read it. It's from her. I have had so much fun this past year with Miss White. She has taught me math, science, in so many fun ways. She has given me so many different learning tools and always helps us. Unfortunately, we did not get to do as many fun lessons as she had hoped. Our class had the majority of troublemakers. Most years, these kids are put into separate classes. Not this year. Miss White had a lot of fun learning plans planned for us. Because of misbehavior, we did not get to do many of them. A lot of the time, when Miss White tells kids to silently do work at their seats, kids don't listen on purpose. All of these things make it hard and frustrating for kids who want to get their work done. Miss White is an amazing teacher. She has shown me love every day that I come to class and show up. She does not deserve this stress. Thank you very much. We love you, Miss White. Stella Marie Shipley-Aja. That was written by an 11-year-old, okay? So I'd like to take a moment to speak for a moment. So, little background on my twins. They have been through a lot in their life. I have made poor decisions that have taken me away from them, and we homeschooled them until 3rd grade because I wanted to establish a good line of communication that I don't feel school districts in general, not just you, but any district, really focuses on, which is no screen time, teaching the kids to have an imagination and really focusing on who they are as children and what they need. And I feel that luckily we've had great teachers for 3rd and 4th grade with our kids that we've put them through. And Miss White has changed my daughter from being she's an amazing woman, little child, if you will, but Ms. White has guided her into making better decisions than she was in the beginning of the year. And for that, nothing can, you can't replace that. So that's all I want to say.
Thank you.
Thank you. You guys have a wonderful evening.
Would anyone else like a chance to speak?
Sorry, she wanted you guys to have a.
Oh, thank you.
Sorry.
Thanks.
I just wanted to kind of piggyback on what Stella's father just said, because I meant to also mention it. I'm also a volunteer inside Sheffield. I help pass out fluorides in the morning. So I get to see a little bit of the inside of the classrooms that, not every parent gets to see. And I can absolutely say that Ms. White has a difficult class, a very difficult class. I see it every Tuesday. And I see her calling for help every Tuesday. Most every Tuesday, maybe not everyone. But there is not the help that is needed inside Ms. White's classroom. And like I said, Autumn has been a difficult child in the past inside a classroom, and I know the help that's needed, and she does not have that backup. I think that plays a huge part in the daily learning for these kids. I know Autumn's come home multiple times, really disappointed that they haven't got to something, and that's directly what it's related to. I actually had to have her remove some names out of her letter today because she was so passionate about making sure everyone knew what was happening. But I really just wanted to piggyback on that because I do get the opportunity to see inside the classroom weekly. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Izzy Vakula Curtis, and my sister is in Miss White's 4th grade class. And we've had pretty good luck with teachers at Sheffield. And but Miss White, I've never seen her so excited about learning, because she'll come home every day and she'll say what they did in school, and she's so excited about learning. And we went to the Ben Franklin Institute in Pennsylvania, and there was a whole exhibit about science, and she was so excited to show what Miss White taught her. She was building circuits and testing them, and she was showing us how to make them. And I'm in 7th grade, and I just found out about circuits this year, and she's only in 4th grade, and Miss White's taught her so much that I didn't even know yet. And she's been through a lot this year, so she doesn't deserve this.
Thank you. All right, thank you all. Next item is important events, upcoming events, and also any school committee attendance at events. We do have it.
Sure thing. June 11th, our final exams all day at the high school. June 12th, our final exams for A&C at the high school, which is also a half a day. June 13th, final exams D&E at the high school, also a half a day. June 12th is the end of year activities assembly at the middle school that starts at 9:30. June 14th, our makeup exams at the high school. It's also a half a day. June 13th is the preschool end of year celebration at Hillcrest. That's all day long. June 13th is also the all-school sing celebration at Sheffield. That's at 9 a.m. And also on the June 13th is the end of year academics assembly at the middle school at 9:30 a.m. June 14th is the 8th grade celebration at the middle school at 9:45 a.m.
Does anyone else have another event that didn't make the list? Anyone?
I just want to say that I attended the concert, the high school and middle school concert. It was very good.
Oh, thank you.
I was really pleased with the improvement. The band has grown. The high school band has grown, and yeah.
Good thing. Thank you for mentioning that. Any other events people attended they'd like to mention? Jen, and then.
I attended the Hillcrest end of year celebration. They had a dinner and a circus performance, and then all the kids got pops, and they had a great time.
No, I just wanted to, I did attend the concert as well. My boys are in the band, so it was good to hear that they have, the band actually has grown, and they did very well.
Great. Anything else, anyone? Cassie?
I was able to attend the Sheffield Field Days, just pop in briefly at Camp Kiwani this past week, and the kids had a blast. Thank you to Sherry and Ron Wood for allowing that to happen at their camp. It was a lot of fun, and I attended a portion of the graduation ceremony this last Friday as well.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, thanks. Do we have anything from Ally for a student report?
No.
No. Okay. Anything, Teresa?
No.
All right, but thank you for being here. Yeah.
Just add, Teresa, the Irving School Committee moved its June 18th scheduled meeting that Jane and I were going to attend. Somebody else had some kind of a scheduling conflict, and so they moved it to the 17th, and we've got Guild Town meeting that night and some other things. So I've been corresponding with the super, and maybe we'll reschedule for a later date. I just wanted to make sure you knew that. So,
Very good.
Yeah.
Thanks. Next, superintendent's report.
Okay. Where is it? Some of the items are a little longer, so it was like 7 items. I'm not going to read you most of them, but I did want to tell you some of the kind of colorful details in my letter, and I don't think I'll read them out loud. But the first one was, and I got the submission from Connor. Oh, by the way, Gil's 6th grade graduation was at 12:30 today, so that's always really well done by the staff, particularly Mr. Grout, and the 10 graduating 6th graders were featured. That was a nice event. But anyway, what Connor told us about in this letter was that on Saturday, June 1st, Gill Elementary had a camp out, their first ever camp out event, where they watched a movie outdoors. There were like 80 families, 80 kids and families that attended, and they had kind of a bonfire and things, and then they watched a movie, and 25 folks spent the night camping on the school grounds, so that was kind of cool. The second item I have is that I wanted to mention that on June 3rd, the middle and high school hosted a regional meeting with representatives from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. The point of this was we have a Safe and Supportive Schools grant this year for $10,000, and it was an implementation phase of the grant, the second year of the grant. And so people from other school districts were invited to come learn about some of the kind of bullying prevention and equity and diversity work that's going on in our school. And so that's what they got to highlight, and they were pretty proud of the reception they received from the other schools and from the DESE visitors. And I just wanted to give a shout out to Jessica Vachula Curtis, who's heads up the high school advisory group, and Dan Carew, our 6th grade math teacher, who heads up a Bridges advisory group for middle school students, and Donna Fowler, who heads up a high school social justice advisor group, and she is kind of helped work with the girls that came a few weeks ago to talk about the changing over of the graduation gowns. So that was a good, nice event back on the 3rd. My third item, on May 29th, I attended a DESE-run training on what's essentially called calibrating teacher evaluation process. You know, the heart of our, and this might come up later in the meeting, but the heart of our teacher evaluation process is series of 15 or longer minute mini observations over the course of the year, in addition to an occasional full period observation. And so the data an evaluator, an administrator collects, and the way they judge and interpret what they see is something that school districts' administrative teams always work on together. We've done that work often by finding our own sources of video to watch and discuss and kind of calibrate together. But now DESE has a tool that supplies a whole storehouse of videos cataloged by topic and grade level and so on, and a tool for how to have a formal discussion a nice process for that. And so it's a good tool. I'm looking forward to using it with our team starting this summer. I also attended the next day another training in East Hampton from DESE, which was about the new accountability system that's coming this coming fall. It's largely the same as the current system. There are some things that will be different, like the way student attendance will be more of a factor than it's been in the past. Next item, I just wanted to mention that Jane and I were honored to attend the inauguration of Yves Salomon Fernandez, the 10th president of GCC. We did that on May 30th in the afternoon, and it was really uplifting occasion and nice to be invited to that and to be a part of that. And I just wanted to put in a plug for the fact that I spoke to her about they're hosting our teaching tolerance social justice training on July 11th, and that's still occurring, and there's still some spots if any of the rest of you would like to attend that. Senior awards was mentioned. The graduation was mentioned. That was on the 7th. The awards night was on the 6th, and that was really a nice event. They do a very dignified job with that, and it was nice to be part of both of those occasions. And then finally, I wanted to mention that we had students get recognized for something that's brand new that DESE's kind of excited about. It's called the Seal of Biliteracy, and Diane Ellis was single-handedly responsible for that. It took a ton of her time, but she made it happen for these kids this year, and I asked her if she could stop in and just tell you what that was, so if that's okay. Do that.
Hello, everyone. I'll give credit where credit was due. I administratively managed to pull this off with Annie Leonard and with Beth Fortin, who, without the two of them, this would not have happened. But really, the credit goes to our students for reaching and stretching and going beyond. Just wanted to provide people a little bit of background. This, state of Massachusetts and in general, biliteracy skills are being increasingly valued within our schools, within our communities, within the workplace, and under the Look Act, which is essentially an act that governs practices in English language learner education, for which one of the departments that I'm responsible for, they have put out one of series of guidance documents on the seal of biliteracy, and essentially it is a way of recognizing students with an insignia, an official state insignia on their high school diploma as well as their high school transcript, and it recognizes students who have achieved not only advanced or proficient on English language arts competency standards, so for the MCAS assessment, but also who have demonstrated a level of proficiency or proficiency with distinction on an assessment of a partner language. So our students volunteered and signed up and spent a day testing there's various state recognized tools that you have to use and proctoring conditions and so forth. So it is administratively a little bit to take on, but and it is voluntary. So I don't know of any other districts in Franklin County that have offered this and have students who have achieved this. So, and essentially the proficiency standard for a partner language, so it could be, it could be Spanish, could be French, could be Latin, could be American Sign Language. The state has a wide range of languages that are recognized, and then accompanying standard tests that measure proficiency. And so it sort of corresponds with an advanced placement level 4, which sort of usually speaks to us educators like, oh, AP level 4. So, but that's kind of the standard to achieve, which also for students who are interested in going on to college, AP 4 is recognized for college credit. So there's some, obviously value to it. We had a student who met the standard, who was so close to meeting it with distinction. You're assessed in listening, speaking, reading, and writing in the partner language, and this student was at an advanced level in 3 out of the 4 areas. So, and then we had 2 other students who
were just below in one of the areas from qualifying for the state seal of biliteracy, but we did recognize them with a Biliteracy Achievement Award because in order to meet the standard that they achieved, again, advanced or proficient on ELA MCAS, but also the level of assessment on the partner language exam was essentially comparable to an AP Level 3. So we're very excited about it and really looking at how we can continue to promote and value biliteracy, bicultural students, our students who are challenging themselves by taking a second or a partner language. I just, again, want to credit the students. I'm hoping to have them be further recognized and really credit my colleagues for making this happen with me. So if people have questions, I'm happy to.
Just a quick question. So any student could opt to take one of these exams if they so chose, and there would be a list available of the different languages that were available?
Right. The state came out with their guidance document well after the publication of our handbook this past year. Their guidance document came out in December, and so we will be publishing this in our handbook as well as, putting it on the website. We did disseminate information to high school students who met the original qualifications of advanced or proficient. That is a qualifier.
Okay. That's an initial qualifier.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
I just have one. Do you have to teach that language in your school system? Like if somebody comes into the school system and they from another country, they immigrate and they're proficient in the other language, do they have to have courses in the school?
No, they have to really just demonstrate a level of proficiency in that partner language. So we could have students who have have a high interest in French. My daughter took Latin. We have students who could qualify with just taking a proficiency test who are just have a high interest in learning a second language and advancing their biliteracy skills, language skills.
Any other questions for Diane? Thank you, and please express our thanks to the other folks too.
I certainly will. And staff were really excited, and our students were really excited. It's just one of those feel-good moments.
It was nice to hear that at graduation, being the first time. That's great. Thank you. Anything else in your report?
Nope.
Okay. And I don't believe we have a business and operations report this evening. I'm sorry, Jen.
I just had a quick question on Sullivan's report. The students that came in about the cap and gowns that you had mentioned, are we going to put that on a future agenda so that we don't have to decide, like, whatever the ordering date is, we want to have plenty of time so we don't get too close to that deadline?
Okay. Thank you.
It's actually on my superintendent's listserv right now. It's a big topic that's been going around.
Yeah, we just want to have time to discuss because we only made a temporary plan for this year.
Okay, good to remind us of that. We all appreciate that, to get reminders. Thank you. Okay, school committee reports. The warrant subcommittee need to approve the warrants, or it isn't done?
We didn't have any to sign.
There were no warrants tonight provided. Okay.
Not that I know of.
I thought Nicole had them on the list.
They came out in an email, right?
Yep. Nobody brought them to us.
And then usually the cover sheets are supposed to be sent over to
Oh, okay. Well, Joanne's away on vacation. Nobody brought
we
that
can
up.
do that next time.
Yeah.
I'm sorry that didn't happen.
I forgot that we even had them.
Expected it.
We got the email last week.
If there's anything urgent, we can.
Yeah, stop by the office.
Thank you. And then we will put it on the next agenda to do these as well. Next item under business, the first A is school choice policy. We have information provided. JFBB is the basic policy about school choice in general, and then we've also included JFBC, which is intra-district choice. and JFBCR interdistrict choice regulations. And I think you wanted Michael
Sure,
to
I can
bring up
explain
some-
why this is on the agenda. The easiest way to explain this is to give you an example of what occurs. So we get some fairly high interest from Montague families to attend Gill, and they are allowed to do that through our intra-district choice policy. And our policy is that we fill up any vacancies with intra-district choice before we take any inter-district choice, students who, let's say, live in Greenfield. What happens from time to time is there will be a family that lives in Greenfield, let's say, and they have a student attending Gill, and the student might start in first grade, but now they're in third grade, and then they have a younger sibling, and that family wants to have that student go to Gill Elementary. But that second student would get priority among inter-district choice, other Greenfield kids or kids from Irving or so on. But my interpretation of things has been that intra trumps inter under any circumstance, sibling or not sibling. But I feel like, sometimes I feel bad for families, inter-district families in that situation. So I just wanted to run by you the idea that that's how I interpret things and how we do things, and is that okay, or would you like to change policy?
So on the third page, it says my notes, here's the choice selection sequence, again explained the way it works now, taking those two together. Jen and then Cassie.
I see how you have like the 3 steps. I almost like to add at the beginning of all of that, the intra-district with siblings, then the intra-district that don't already have a sibling at that school.
Yeah, we actually do.
Because I know that kind of happens, that the siblings have, but it's, so if we could kind of make that clear that they get the first.
Sure, and those are just my informal notes. I didn't even know that, I forgot that those were on here that I sent you. But
yeah, but I don't know if that's
that
like,
would be a
your
nice thing to
notes,
clarify.
Yeah, the kids that have a student already.
Sibling within intra.
Within intra, and then everything moving down in a letter, a number. And then, I do feel for the families that have a second sibling, but with school choice, we get such a limited amount of funding for them coming from another town. It's not the cost of educating that student. So I think financially, we really need to give preference to Gill Montague kids first before another town slot. And that's just my opinion.
Thank you. Cassie?
I don't want to open up like Pandora's box or anything, but maybe down the road we should look at why so many kids living in Turners and Montague want to go to Gill instead of going to Sheffield. Like, I think that might be a conversation we should have if this gets to be an issue where there's, all these families that live in Montague that don't want to go to Sheffield but want to go to Gill, the same district. Like, what are the disparities that make it so that they have to kind of fight to get their kid into Gill? Does that make sense? Again, big discussion for later, but I just think if we're talking about this, that might be something to discuss down the road. If this keeps coming up. I mean, school choice is what it is, but, I just think, anyway, that was just my thought.
Okay, thanks. Teresa?
What are the numbers that we're talking about? You don't have any actual figures as to how many kids from Montague end up going to Gill or end up wanting to go to Gill and only so many can go. What are we talking about here?
Well, that's in your packet.
There is
and a couple sheets ahead. We can flip to that part of the conversation. The number of openings in Gill K through 6 is listed there in red for this year. And the number of requests, I don't know off the top of my head.
Well,
but it's about, I think maybe around 10 or so for kindergarten from Montague. Yeah.
Going to Gill. So like 50%.
Jen?
I can talk with you at some point about what I've heard from some families that have made that decision to ask to go to Gill another time. But one thing I'd like to praise Gill for is like the camp out and the hikes that they do to the vernal pools and things like that. As a parent, I'm very impressed by the focus on the outdoor learning and the community that they have in Gill. So I think that, in my opinion, is a big draw.
It's the same district.
Two very different places.
Yeah.
Well, not just school, community.
But my kids are at
Well,
Hillcrest,
yeah.
just to
Okay.
say.
Tommy?
I mean, I know, like I said, like Cassie said, it's a deeper conversation, but it's easy to have a camp out when you have 20 kids in a class.
Exactly. Yep.
When you have one grade in a school. And I'm looking at the enrollment stats, and I know this is sort of a sore subject when you talk about a district trying to be financially viable. You've got 10 kids that graduated from 6th grade, which I'm like, I would love to have. That's a third of my class. So when you want to talk about the reasoning, what teacher wouldn't love to have 10 kids in a class? And that's what parents tend to look for. I mean, this has been going on since my kids were in preschool. They love going over there because you have one grade and you got 12 kids sitting in the class.
Anyone else? Haley?
I'd just like to make sure that we address Michael's request for feedback about the intra-district. Do you have any recommendations based on your experience of how this plays out? Or are you just
I
looking
think
for
it's
guidance?
best to keep doing what we're doing. Otherwise, you really, I mean, it calls into question competing values, and you'd have to really visit the whole thing. I think there's logic to what we do, and it's based on things that have been well considered. But I just wanted, my hope is that you would validate current practice.
Tommy?
I don't know how to do that. Do we make a motion to approve this? To approve the policy, or is that what?
I mean, we
It
can,
is.
if that's what the group wishes. We can take a vote as we would with anything else.
I move that we approve the policy
As it exists.
As it exists.
Okay. Would you like to make a
That's
motion?
what, is that a highlight, or is there a change in any of this, or?
Nothing's changed.
No, it's just that it's worded the way all of those policies are worded, but sometimes policies don't give all the information, so I think that's why I believe Superintendent Sullivan wanted to explain it a little more carefully, so if it comes down to either or, that's the order it works in.
I'm just wondering, because this highlight, there's red and there's bolded, so I'm just like, what, was there something added? There's gender identity, I don't know, was that in the
Oh,
policy
that,
before? like
those
that?
are things that have had to be, the
So-
red are words that have had to be added to any and all policies where that list exists within the last year or so. As we're going through and updating policies, gender identity needs to be added. That wasn't present previous years. And the yellow is.
That's just my own personal
is-
highlight.
So nothing has really changed then?
No,
Okay,
it's
then-
just the explanation of when it comes down to it. It doesn't exactly say one comes it before the other when it comes to siblings or things like that. So I think the idea is just to let the committee weigh in on whether they feel that's a reasonable way to interpret it.
So do I just say, I make a motion to vote to the policy to remain as is?
Okay, does that sound
Sure.
reasonable? Yep, anyone else?
And endorse the current interpretation. Maybe add that on. Because the current policy is why he wasn't sure from reading the policy if this was the right
Do you
application.
have to vote on interpretation? I mean, it's just, the policy. is
Well, he's
policy.
looking for, I'm sorry to jump in like that, but he's just looking for guidance from us. Is this the right way
You
to
can vote
apply
to
the
keep the policy and
policy?
just go, you good. I mean, the motion is to vote the policy.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Heather seconded? Any other discussion?
Do you want to clarify the motion for me?
To accept the policy as is.
Thanks.
Anyone else? Questions, comments, suggestions?
Who seconded?
I did. Heather did. Mike?
Just to say that we have the conversation here, if there was any concern or question about what the intent was. It was a clear conversation, so.
Okay. All right. All those in favor? Any opposed? Abstentions? One abstention? Thank you.
Jane,
Yes, I'm sorry.
would it be appropriate to approve of Dr. Sullivan's interpretation of this and the ranking and how it works? Separate, it does not include it into the policy, but just give our concurrence with his interpretation?
No reason we couldn't.
Do we have to have his interpretation on every policy? I mean, that's, to me, it's like, what are we doing? We're voting to have his, to say that his interpretation was correct? Is that what we're doing?
No, to say we support that that's what we want to happen. That's all. But I
Thank
think
you.
it's redundant.
I do. I think it's redundant.
I might say that I think it was about 10 years ago that we started intra-district school choice. And at that time, this ranking was, I'm dating myself, forget it.
It was more than 10 years ago, because I think there were some kids before mine who were choosing to go.
Wasn't when they closed the Montague Center School?
Yeah, I think it was the Montague Center School.
About 15 years ago. Jen?
No, we don't necessarily want to add dates in the policy, but there are already some dates in there to when you can apply and things like that. But when are the decisions finalized, so we know class sizes and things going into
We would have
kind of
done
the
it
next?
last week, but I wanted to wait for this, so we'll do our drawings and
Very
things
soon.
tomorrow.
Okay.
On that, I just wanted to say, other districts tend to do theirs earlier. I know of families who are waiting to find out about Gill, but already in at Leverett, so we
Yeah,
might want to consider moving it up.
We typically do it a few weeks, a couple weeks earlier than now.
Usually the end of May.
Yeah, usually the end of May.
Okay, good point. Thank you. So, Timmy, did you want to make a motion as such?
You have a motion standing there?
We voted that, but you
No.
could make a motion as well about the
No,
interpretation
I don't
if
need
you'd
to.
like. No? Okay.
Thank my consensus of the group in the discussion.
Okay, thank you. The next item is class sizes, current and targets, and this is a discussion item. We already looked at the openings, but on the front of that paper, you can see the current enrollments as they exist. Just a caution, often these change over the summer, quite dramatically sometimes now. There tends to be a lot of movement often with school-aged children.
Can I ask what the purpose of the discussion is?
It was most of these were items that were suggested at our last meeting as agenda items. Our people on the committee would like included. So we had a rather long list, so we've tried to include as many as we can this time, and then we'll keep track and include the others within the next couple of meetings, hopefully. Cassie?
I thank you for bringing this. I do think it's important that we know kind of what it looks like for those that aren't in and around the schools. But I do also want to comment just on being cautious about getting too deep into these. Only because, like, I trust that the principals are the ones that kind of juggle the numbers. Like, you know, we set policies, and it's important that we know what's going on, and I would hope that if there was a concern about, you know, a policy regarding this, then we would be on top of it. But I also think we want to be careful not to start micromanaging positions when that is, you know, there is somebody that looks over this data, so.
Yes, I believe it was informational,
Yeah.
particularly. Jen?
I can speak to that. I'm the one that asked to have it put on the agenda.
Okay. I didn't
And
remember.
I know it was a couple weeks ago. So I just kind of wanted to break down because it, to me, you know, as a school committee member and as a parent, that's something that people think is important in deciding on what school they may or may not want to go to and how our class is larger than average or smaller than average, and kind of just general looking at it. But I also wanted to know not just what the numbers were, but what are the policies. So what makes the decision, this class is too big, we're going to add a class, or, you know, what is too big and what's the threshold that you know, is there a policy that dictates that, or is it per year, per teachers and principals and superintendent? Do you guys come together and decide, or is there a policy? Because one number in particular seems a little high, but it's the end of the year, so it may not have started that place. And then looking at into next year, there is some concern about, there's a lot of moving parts with who's going to Gill and who's staying at Hillcrest and things like that, and I'm sure that you're watching it. I'm just wondering where that changes. I know there's been years that mid-year classes have been added, and that's not always the best to move kids around mid-year, but I'm just wondering, that was kind of my question, is sort of just seeing the general picture. Are we way above or below, and what are our targets and what are our goals for the classes, and what makes those changes if necessary.
Okay.
So just informational.
Yes.
So as far as I'm aware, we don't have any policies that would say once, let's say, kindergarten class size gets to 24, we add another teacher or something. So it's more just about what's kind of the norm and how do we operate over the course of the year. I don't think in my 6 years here we've added any sections after the year has started. So I think we've been able to manage things in a way that tries to anticipate growth. The kindergarten at Gill did grow during the course of the year. It didn't start at 22. And Sarah was in touch with me. She even asked me to come over and observe the classes and to kind of get a sense that those were getting high. But we weren't really in a position, plus they don't have space to add another kindergarten in the spring there. So that it's kind of more organic than a number. And we haven't had to do that. And we're not in a place, the only way where we're in a place to kind of massage or manage the numbers would be with deciding how many choice students we want to take in. And then you don't necessarily receive them anyway, but you want to manage choice so that you kind of stay with underneath some thresholds that we've got on the next page there, but those are just targets that I've established with the admin team. That's not in policy anywhere.
Okay, and that was my question is, what makes that happen? I mean, you're saying that hasn't happened maybe when you're here, but I've heard that there have been classes that have been added mid-year, so that's kind of where some of the question came from. And looking at the number, if some of the folks that maybe wanted to go to Gill from Hillcrest didn't get into Gill, if they came back, that could make that number get a lot higher, but maybe they'll go to Greenfield or Frontier. There's a lot of moving parts. So I just wanted to know, in general, are we having large class sizes, small class sizes, or average? So it sounds like we're close to target, but we have some we might want to keep an eye on, and I'm confident you're doing that. So,
Cassie?
Well, I think you also have to take into account, kindergartners. I don't know about Gill, but I would assume this, at Hillcrest there's a para in the classroom as well. There's an extra adult helper. You don't know how many of these kids have extra accommodations and IEPs and whatnot. So this is just a very black and white, this is how many heads are in the classroom. So I don't think you can really, you probably can't tell that much from looking at this. When you don't know about added supports, you don't know about, okay, well maybe there's 19, but maybe one of them, is partial inclusion. Maybe they leave for half of the day, that sort of thing. So, really, you just don't know.
Tommy?
Just to reiterate, no, there is no policy, but there is an instance. I know my kids were part of the bubble class where they had to add a grade every year until they got to the fourth grade, and they just decided to jam them all into 3 classes. So yes, there is no real policy. There's no real number. It's sort of like, all right, what are we going to do? We're not going to have another 4th grade teacher. We'll just put you in 3 classes. So they did add a grade from 1st grade, 2nd grade, and 3rd grade.
Even just to speak personally, not as chair, but even back when I taught in the district, there was always talk about what's the upper limit, and there was never really anything in writing. It was just generally, at that time at least, it was generally kept a bit smaller from K, which then we added pre-K after a while, through 2nd, and then once the students were in 3rd, sometimes it seemed to be okay to make them a little bigger, but there was never, and I also looked again, there's really never been a policy per se. And I think what complicates it isn't just in the summer that people move, it's any time during the year. And so it's hard to allow for how many people may come or may go, or how many make that choice later. It's quite fluid, I think. I think Bill was next.
I think so too, thank you. I think that there has been in the past at least a consensus on some committees that the mid to low 20s was a threshold. It's not an absolute threshold, it was a desired number as on the top end. But certainly, in those discussions, there's also been recognition that that there are educators and critics who will ascribe to the fact that statistically you can run up to 35 students in a class and not see a whole lot of difference. But the committees in the past that formed the consensus of the numbers disregarded that as unrealistic. Certainly for the outside community, applying pressure to those committees to try to establish some lower number, and then also trying to balance it through time with the budgetary concerns, which are the obvious impact. And therefore, instead of splitting classes necessarily to get down to, say, 18 in a class, half of 35, in the mid to high 20s, if those were ever attained, there was an aid that you would try to budget for because it was more economical, and it's only economical, not good. I'm not advocating to fit a non-professional to aid in the classroom. So I know there are numbers out there for high and low, mostly on the high end, which are way above what I would hope this group would want to have. But there are numbers out there.
Jen?
For preschool, the numbers aren't on here, and I know that registrations are probably still coming in, but with the change that we made this year with the fees for preschool, I'm just wondering how many resident families, if we're going to get a larger number, and then also kids that are in services that are birth to 3 sometimes come in mid-year. So I'm just curious if the number has gone up since we made that change this year.
Or do we know that
Or
yet?
we might not
I
know
don't
yet.
know where Sarah's at with registrations. It's a little early to know, I think. I mean,
Yeah.
she's been doing some pre-registration.
And some of these numbers, of course, are going to change, and looking at staffing and all that I'm confident that you and Sarah are going to do that. And but it's just something, as the guild choices and things, we just want to. I just wanted to know if there was a general policy, and it sounds like you just do your best. And
Well, and we've also, we've never reduced a teacher at a grade level to save money where the class size was going to be like higher than 25. And we would reluctantly kind of do it at all. But our class sizes are really, I think, enviable. They're in the, generally in the kind of upper teens to lower 20s. High school, they're tiny. And these are pretty average kind of numbers that you see on this current
that's all I was
example.
looking for, is just a general.
And then on the back of that is the school choice openings as of the 1st of May. And pre-K is not a grade that folks are allowed to choice into.
And we have a very difficult time knowing what we're going to get for a kindergarten enrollment at Hillcrest. So we typically have not had any choice openings there.
Any other questions or comments about that information? And they're also, this evening, we were also given an article about the impact and limitations of smaller classes. There's always a lot of studies on that sort of thing that can be read, and that often have a different, as Phil mentioned, it depends on who puts out the study quite often, what they think. But it is some information that might be interesting to people. Okay, the next item, again, most of these are requests by school committee members. The teacher retention statistics in the last 5 years. I think that was a request someone had. And actually, The statistics you get are more lack of retention than actual retention. People that retired, people that moved for whatever reason. And it starts in 2014 on the back, and then progresses through 15, 16, 17, 18, and as far as we know, this year as well. Haley?
Tony was first.
Oh, sorry.
I'm just looking at some of this information where there's duplicates on here.
Mhm.
There's someone who retired in 2019 who's been gone for 2 years. Maria Paletti.
Mhm.
I'd like to see, if possible, where the non-retirements are coming from, like specific by school.
Oh, okay.
That would be interesting to see. You know, the non-retirements, are they
People who
coming
leave
from
for other
one-
reasons
right.
than retiring.
Correct. Are they coming from one particular school, so we can sort of, I mean, I'd be curious to see that, because I just went, knowing what I know, I'm going down the list going, this is interesting. So, just, you know, what school are they, or what building, or it could be a position or whatever, not position, you know, what department, could be central office or whatever, you know, just to see, is there a large chunk of individuals that are non-retired, coming from one particular school?
Haley?
I'd like to know about the non-retirements and how that divides up into resignations, voluntary, and non-renewals.
Okay. I don't, I think legally we can only give you a number. We can't really designate.
That's fine, no, I'm
We
not-
can designate if somebody's retired.
Right.
That's sort of public information, but other than that, we could only get a figure.
Number would be
And there's
helpful.
A number.
reductions in force as well. So,
Yes, that's one of the years there were a lot of reductions that I remembered after I saw it. Cassie?
Well, and I think regardless if it's like people resigning or people, you know, being terminated, there's a lot at one school, like maybe that's something we should look at. Like if teachers are leaving left and right, and then like we need to talk about that. You know?
Okay. Yes, Jen?
I'd like to maybe revisit this further into the summer, because I think, you know, sometimes if someone leaves mid-year, that paints a different picture than if they leave over the summer. But I would assume that many things that could happen over the summer.
Okay. Yep.
Just might not be complete for this year.
I think something that occurred to me when I was looking at the list, only because of my experience with some of these, I think it's sometimes hard to establish what is exactly a retirement. Sometimes people don't, when they notify us that they're won't be returning, they don't always say they're retiring. So it's, I mean, usually the determining factor is if they didn't get another job and they then filed retirement papers. But not everybody puts it that way when they're leaving. So I think that can be tricky as well. I noticed some of these that I know were actual retirements when they left, because that's what they said. But they didn't necessarily send a letter to the district saying they were retiring per se. So I think that can be a little tricky about these as well. Anything else about that? Mike?
So with more time, we can dig a little deeper. That was a quick turnaround that we tried to give you that information for. And then I did do some comparative digging for you by going to the DESE website and found out that our retention rate, the percentage of teachers who stayed, was 91.4% in 2018. That put us in the 75th percentile in the state. Only 25% of the districts in the state had a lower retention rate than we did, as opposed to years like 2013, where 90% of districts had a higher retention rate than we did. So, and I gave you all that raw data, so you could take a look.
I'd like,
Not printed, he emailed it to us.
Oh, it was emailed, okay, I'm sorry, my mistake. Tommy?
you give the retention percentage for 2018, I'd like to see the rest, you know, the other years that coincide with that. You know, what's the
I have it
retention
right
rate?
here, too. I sent it all to you in an email.
Oh, you mean the notes I didn't get? Okay.
So it was 27% in 2017, 24% in 16.
I'm sorry, did you say 27?
Oh, where we ranked in the state, the
Oh,
percentage
first, I
was
was- okay.
83, the percentage was
Okay.
83%, and 81%. So
Yes,
that's,
there's percentiles, percentages.
So it's in the packet that I didn't get. Okay.
yeah,
Take a look at that.
It actually was in an email.
yeah.
Separate from
Separate,
the
yeah.
yeah.
I
You'll get it when you get them.
Yahoo.
Thanks, Cassie.
did not have time to do that until Friday night or whatever it was.
I sent it to Yahoo.
Thank you.
You'll get it twice.
3 times.
That was duplicated. Okay, any other comments, questions about that information? Okay, the next item is the 8th grade concern shared with the school committee. And I think, again, that was a request.
And it just, that didn't make it in your packet. The only copy we had in our office was mine that had notes written all over it. And then we
Some packets had it in it.
right, well, what happened was after Sabrina ran off the packets, Jen Renahan did send it to us just in the nick of
Okay.
time, and so she put them in the packets by hand. And,
Okay.
but I don't know that everybody
I
got
only missed Haley. I think everybody else got it, right?
Looks like I got it in my actual packet, but I was looking on the digital packet.
That's what it was. So it didn't make it to the digital.
Okay, the digital packet sometimes,
Yes.
right, okay.
I did fix that today.
Yeah. Thank you, yes, I did see that. So, I think just a little background in case people weren't available at the last meeting to hear the discussion. Jennifer Renahan, who teaches 8th grade in Great Falls Middle School, had a class. One of their projects was to learn about school committee, what our roles are, what our responsibilities are, and in the process of asking if those of us that were available could meet with them to discuss things, they came up with this really comprehensive list of things that they wanted to discuss and ask questions about, and also give us information on. It was a lot of wonderful information, and it was extremely well organized. It shows the variety of things that they have interest in seeing happen differently, from really basic housekeeping kinds of things to larger questions that are really, really helpful. Excuse me?
No, I had a question.
Oh, okay,
but
great.
If
No,
you're,
no.
are you done?
I'm pausing, yeah,
How,
good.
so I apologize, I couldn't go to this, and I'm really disappointed, but how many kids were there? Were there 6 or 8? No? No,
It was about 20.
Class.
The whole
Oh, it was a whole class?
Oh, yeah.
So,
You each had like 5 to 6 on our table.
Oh, that's awesome. Oh, I thought it was just gonna be the kids that wrote the letter. Now I'm even more disappointed in myself.
no, the whole class. Unfortunately, to meet with a class, it has to be during the school day, and for some people, that's not possible.
Yeah.
And so,
I thought it was just, because I have an 8th grader, so from my understanding, they were put in different groups that did different projects, and so I guess I just assumed that it was going to be like the 6 that had written the letter.
right. No, this
Not
is
that
the
would
whole
have
class,
changed it.
and
Okay.
there were 4 of us and Superintendent Sullivan who were invited.
Mhm.
So each group of about 5 students at a table had 1 or 2 school committee members or the superintendent chatting with them.
So I was gonna ask, and I don't know if, I'll still ask the question, but I was thinking it was like 6 or 7 kids. Did any of them talk about their intention next year, if they were going to stay at the high school or if they were leaving? No? I just wasn't sure if that was a topic that came up. Not that that was a purpose of it, but if
Right.
that happened to.
They didn't. We really let
Yeah.
them lead the conversation. We asked
Okay.
them what things they wanted to, I mean, we were there for the whole period, which was
Yeah,
great.
great.
We wanted them to tell us what they wanted us to know or what they wanted to ask us. We wanted to answer as best we could. They did express the hope that this sort of meeting would continue, which we felt was a really great idea. I mean, I'm speaking for the group, but please, anybody else jump in. Tommy?
I'm just gonna cut to the chase. Now what? I mean, this
Okay,
is kind of cute, because my kids have been talking about this for a while. I didn't go to the meeting at all because I didn't want to be in the room with them and them feeling embarrassed and all, but I don't think they were part of that class.
No.
But there's some really heavy things on here. I know you said, oh, this looks nice. Talking about the bullying and equity and discipline, that's not nice, that's a concern. And what are we going to do about it?
Right, I didn't say all the items were nice.
Right.
I said they were important, and they went from the basic to the
Right,
more
but now what?
large scale. That's my question to the committee. What is the will of the committee? What would people like to do in terms of that?
That's why,
Am I having?
that's why I brought it up. I wanted it on the agenda. So I don't know if like something, should we as a group, like pick one of these to discuss a meeting?
Each meeting?
Yeah. You know, I don't know. Can we just say facilities? Can we please make sure there's soap in the bathrooms? Like, does that need a conversation?
Can I speak to the soap?
Right, and then I have one on that too, so go ahead. Go right
The
ahead.
soap, I don't think, I think that's sort of a building and an administration decision, or, you know, so I don't want to get into that, knowing what I know about soap.
Oh, okay.
So that's, yes.
Well, right, well, it would be, I
Right.
would like to know, and you know, that's the problem with most issues, is if everyone knows why.
I
you can
believe the
get
soap
behind
is,
it, but we don't have to talk about it right this second.
Abused? Thank you.
Misused?
Thank you. So oftentimes, it's either that it's broken or that it's not. And my kids have said, I've gone there and I'm like, so-and-so's rule, so that's how I know. Also know, because I've had to call about the soap. So that's the soap piece, but that, I mean, I get it. You need soap. These are, you know, middle schoolers are filthy. They need their hands washed, and it's, you know, I have middle schoolers, that's why I said that. But for me, I think, I mean, in terms of like the inequity in or inconsistent punishments, that's something that's part of policy that we really need to start investigating. And then Cassie talked about whether students in the 8th grade said whether or not they were going to be leaving. If you had come across a certain group of kids, they would have told you why and why they're not going to be staying here. And a lot of it has to do with what you see on this list.
Right, but I didn't feel it was our job to lead them to a place
Didn't
they
say
didn't
that.
want
Yeah,
to go.
right. Didn't say that, but I'm saying that's a legitimate question.
Yes,
and then
it is,
especially
right.
when you talk about like a lot of this, the student voice. That's why I say I'm going to cut to chase. What now? Right. You talk about you know, inconsistent, you know, punishment. That's stuff that we were talking about when we had the group for the civil rights group come in and talk about that. This is pretty important. Mm-hmm. And my thing would be, we need to look into this. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what that looks like.
Okay.
Yeah. Figure.
Mike?
Well, you know, I'll second that motion. The thing that struck me was that they don't, and this is my group, but they feel like outsiders in their own school. They feel marginalized, powerless. I mean, these are overgeneralizations, so I get crazy. But they didn't, and again, I'm interpreting, but I didn't feel like they felt they had agency. That's a big word now, right? And there is no middle school student government that deals with school issues. There's a group that deals, you know, that does the dances and school, you know, class activities, but they don't have the council like the high school does. And so we yeah, you know, it's a small district, and so I feel like we need to talk with them more regularly, and not just the 8th grade class. I mean, this was a real sort of eye-opening moment, because they're each one was thoroughly engaged in their own learning process and the school process. The learning process maybe going too far, but school process, they felt an ownership, and all of that, but felt like they were, that their concerns weren't a big part of the decision-making process. It was just, and you know, these are impressions, I'll make that clear, but they're pretty consistent, and they're consistent with the things we've been hearing from other schools and with students throughout. Mm-hmm. So I mean, how do we manage to have more incidental and regular contact with our customers? Is sort of my question. And I wonder if there's a way that we could, those who are available could volunteer to just go and have lunch once in a while, just to be there, and if people want to sit down and talk, they can. I do think that we need to encourage and support a middle school government thing. I think that the high school, we've started meeting with them, which is state law, but it's one of those state laws without any kind of, if you don't do it, what do you do? Nothing. You just don't do it, and then shame on us. And we have been meeting. We met this year, and that was good. But that needs to be more, because I'm not sure what happened as a result of it.
Right.
So we need to figure out, say, what's next, the next step. But we've taken that first step. Let's get some traction out of it. Decide that, okay, now we're going to do things, and we've got a nice list, and we could invite them to meetings or any number. But we need to just jump into the contact somehow.
Mhm.
Start being places where they can see us. And I'm sorry, the lineup here, but I won't,
No, no, okay.
I won't double
Finish your
dip.
thought. I won't cut you off.
Yeah, I won't, and I won't double
Do that.
dip. But I feel like the students, families, teachers, no one really knows where to turn to get the real answer. And I mean, there are practical reasons for that, but, and culture has been a huge topic of conversation, and the Powertown 21st Century Grant was all about culture. A lot of it was about culture and the need for building a stronger culture, and people who followed the committee for years know that we talk about with all the turnover, and you can't expect someone to bring culture in and implement it. You got to have culture. It's organic. It has to be from here. So we need, one of the questions that I have based on what's next is, how do we become like agents of culture? If people don't know where to go to get the right answers, how do we establish that, some central personality? I mean, the superintendent's busy, he's doing stuff all day. The principals are busy, they're doing stuff. I mean, we're busy too, but we need to own this culture thing somehow.
Mm-hmm.
And since I don't have more developed thoughts on that, thank you for listening.
I think Tommy was next. If I go out of order, let
Sorry.
me know. Sorry, as soon as you started talking, I'm like, I'm right there. I'm biased, as you know, because I have 2 8th graders. I've also known 95% of these 8th graders, and some of them were in preschool. They are a great group. It is probably the largest class size you've had for like a number of years. And it was the bubble class.
Right.
And I've lost my train of thought. You had said so many good things. Your student council for middle school is not empowered the way that it is at the high school. Many of them, and I know it would be great, you want to go sit with them for lunch, but I will tell you right now, they don't want to sit with you for lunch. They want you to have a survey, and they want you to get that survey data to the committee and say, this is what our concerns are, what are you going to do? That's what. I mean, I get that that the superintendent is busy, but the principal, but you also have an assistant principal, we got a dean of students, you have all these adults in here that the students are not being heard. Whether that's their impression, actually it's true. Because I'm going to tell you that right now. That's what many of the kids say. They are not being heard. They're not empowered. My son, Tommy's on the student council, and he's like, yeah, we get to plan the dance, but I don't want, dance is not, sorry. Was that my time? Can I reclaim my time?
No, it is not.
Right. But it's more about the district has not given them their voice. They've silenced them. And that's what the feeling is. And you talk about, I look at the enrollment that they're talking about what's happening in 5th grade. How I was like, I hope you're factoring in those kids that are like, I'm not being heard. I'm going someplace where I'm being heard. So you want to give them agency. You don't, student council. That's great that you're planning events for them, but they're not being heard. And it's sort of like they're not being heard. We're not listening because we're not hearing.
And I think Cassie was next.
I think that these are things that we've heard over and over again from our middle school and high school students, and I just don't know what we're going to do to fix it. I mentioned that I went to the graduation on Friday, and I get a little choked up talking about this because our community does not like us. I left as the kids were getting their diplomas because I think 2 people clapped for Dr. Sullivan, and I think maybe 5 people clapped for Jane. And I felt like I was sitting there with a bullseye on me. And it's this disconnect. I mean, I don't particularly enjoy giving up at least 2 evenings a month and then meetings on top of it. But this is important, and I keep seeing the same things over and over and over again. It's like, how are we going to connect? It's not them and us. I'm them. They're me. And I hope everyone feels the same. But it's just how do we fix this? How many surveys are we going to pass out? How many kids are going to leave? How many families are we going to lose because we don't, and I don't have the answer to it, but I'm so sick of hearing the same complaints. And then feeling like sometimes we talk about things that aren't really relevant or maybe aren't even in our job description, but then there's these giant elephants in the room that we just kind of don't, they might pop up every now and then, but then they're we'll just talk about them again when they like pop back up. Does that make sense? I just, like, I don't know, like, what to say about it. It hurts me. It does.
I think Haley was next.
So I was at that meeting, and I think, I just want to give a shout out to Ms. Renahan. I think the impression that I got was that in her class, the students did have agency. This felt like the place where they really could have their voices heard.
Mhm.
So I think she's doing really good work. One of the big messages that I got that seemed to be an overarching theme was that the students need more access to the administration in the school. They need to be heard by the administration. I think we have an opportunity with Joni Menard coming in to just set up an expectation and a culture where they are going to be heard. So let's take that as an opportunity.
Mm-hmm. And I think there were some other hands here, and then I will get to you, Teresa. I know you had yours up, but I think I saw some here where people put their hands down to not rush anyone. So, Jennifer?
Thank you, Haley, because that's perfect. Set the expectation, changes moving forward that, you know, maybe the principal or the vice principal or the dean of students needs to have regular meetings with kids and not just student council kids. Because I don't want kids that are involved in one particular activity to be the only kids we hear from, or that are in a particular class. I want to hear from the kids that want to talk to us. And school committee, you know, we've been meeting with the student council, and one of the meetings that I was able to make it to, I heard several of the same kind of comments. And again, you know, it's a totally different group, and we're hearing the same things, so that really stands out to me. Some things I'm remembering back, for example, the food. Heather Holmes was here talking about how she had a little focus group with kids, I think, at Sheffield. So if they're saying that they've got some concerns about something in that department, maybe that was something that worked and could be a model for the other schools. You know, props to her for, you know, doing that and really taking that on, because I think that the kids there maybe feel like their voice was heard, and they feel like they're part of the decisions, and something that seems really small can make a huge difference. They just want to feel heard, and if they're telling us these things more than once, I just think something. But I'd like to see this list broken down as to, okay, we told this person to deal with this, and we told this person to deal with this, and I want to see, like, we're not just saying, oh, that's not our area, and then that's it. I want some follow-up, like some accountability that somebody is going to deal with each thing on this list.
And Bill, did I see your hand before?
You might have, but I want to pass.
Okay. Did I miss any others here? And then Teresa?
I'm most concerned about what I keep hearing, and it seems to be systemic. I thought it was just middle school and high school, because those kids are, especially middle school, are not, they're finding themselves and they're all over the place. But one thing that becomes clear to me is that there is bullying going on system-wide in your school, from the elementary right through. That is, to me, something that this committee should be focusing on, and holding the administrators of all the schools, including Dr. Sullivan, accountable for this. They should be giving us reports on the incidents and what they're doing to correct the situation, because it is a cultural thing. If you, as a committee, ask for accountability of all your administrators with numbers, I know there's all sorts of reporting things, but you should be able to get some sense each month of how many kids, how many reports of bullying there are going on. Now, as Dr. Sullivan pointed out, if you do something like that, you tend to have people not reporting it or underreporting it, but there can be ways that this is addressed, so that teachers are reporting it, the kids are clear that things are not addressed the way the handbook says, that the chain of command is not working like it should be, because people say we report things and nothing gets done. All of this is administrative. And I think all the administrators in all your schools should be accountable to what's going on in their school, and there should be a reporting system every month about these incidences. And once it becomes clear the scope of the problem, then you can move to do something about it. But right now, we're not hearing from the administrators about the scope of the problem, except when we had the civil rights questions come. The next month, we got a report, and then we haven't heard one word about the number of incidences since then or what's being done. Having groups come in and teach these kids, various lessons does not mean that there's going to be a decrease if you don't have the enforcement of your handbook consistent. So that's one of the things that needs to be reported. And so I think it's the committee's responsibility, since it has come, we're hearing this again and again at our public hearings, that this is a problem, and I think the committee has every right to expect all the administrators to find a reporting system and to come to us and report each month, not at the end of school year or for a year, each month. I think once you start drawing attention to each month the incidences of bullying or problems or inconsistent reporting, those kinds of things, that will also go into your community. When, we can't respond here, we say that it's going to be taken care of. If people are able to see at the meeting that this is one of the major topics, what's going on with the bullying, how many incidences of it, what kind of actions were taken. We don't have to know names or anything, but just that kind of reporting, I think, will go a long way to discussing what she's talking about. There is a lack of confidence in this committee. I saw it last year. I hadn't been to a graduation in a long time, and I was startled. People were wildly cheering for the graduates and everything, and then when you were introduced, there was polite applause, and I was like, and I got comments from the out-of-town visitors that were at my granddaughter's graduation to that effect, and it was really startling. And I think the committee needs to do some work on this, and I think it's an appropriate thing for the committee to do. You've got the administrators. You say they can run the schools. Well, they should be reporting to this committee.
Okay, I think I saw something there.
Yeah, well, if you want to talk about the elephant in the room, I'm sorry, but the biggest elephant is lack of community support. And I'm sorry, we are here on our time, and we are all working very hard for this school system. That is the only reason why we're here. And we get shit from everybody. And I'm tired of that. They're not clapping for us, really. We're the volunteers of this town. We put in the hard work. I'm so sorry you don't love all the decisions. I'm sorry I can't solve all of the problems immediately. But that is the biggest thing. We had such great turnout for the mascot, but I'm sorry, that is a very small problem with our community. Where is the community now when we're talking about all the important things that we need to talk about? I'm sorry, I can't. We are not an island unto ourselves. I'm bringing it back. Renahan is amazing. She's really digging into the new civics. The civics is how you start to get people to be heard. We are democracy. You have to learn your role in a democracy. You have to learn that your voice needs to be out there. We are teaching these kids civics. Renahan's class is a great example of this. Through one semester, we already got some kids, and we're hearing their voices, and we're hearing some changes. That's how you do it. We need more support for that kind of stuff. I hear some of you saying admin-centric, when every other time, no, less admin. We don't want to do what they say. We want to do it. It's back and forth. We need to get consistent. Yes, all of these are concerns. That's why I said, what are we going to do? Are we going to tackle them one at a time? We can't just sit here and complain about it all. We have a really great place. I chose to move to this community because the one I came from is not community-centric. This community is amazing. Things aren't perfect in our school. There are schools that are better. I believe in white flight. I think a lot of people want to leave our school system and go to other ones that have a lot more money and a lot fewer problems. And that's cowardly. I know that some people have actual reasons to want to go somewhere. I would love to go somewhere else where we got to do camping and we got to do all of those things. That would be great, but I'm committed to this community. That's why I'm here. And I don't understand why it is that so many people are against this committee. We work really well together. We're doing our best. And I just think, this is what we want to support. So let's take Renahan's things. Let's do one at each meeting. We can't do them all. We have our own business as well.
Okay, I need a turn, please. Not as chair, but as myself, having been received so well at graduation.
I'm so sorry.
No, I'm okay with it, which is a sad
It's
thing.
shameful.
I need to
It's
have the
shameful.
right to speak on it. I think it's a larger problem of culture in the country, in the world. People are allowed to be absolutely disrespectful, to do whatever they want, and it's okay. I understand that, sadly. I'm used to it. I understand that doing what seems to be the right thing and working hard to do the best we can is not going to get recognized. The fact that we volunteer our time is not going to get recognized. There's always somebody who has a complaint. That's okay. They're entitled to have complaints. It's part of the job. But I think there's a bigger piece out there than just teaching our children in our school. The community at large, the larger community, the country at large. It's acceptable. Many of the things that we are trying to teach children is not acceptable. I'm not saying we give up, but I'm saying you have to understand the picture is bigger than us here. It's much bigger than that. And that's the way it is. We're going to have to keep fighting, but I think to expect that we're going to turn it around immediately by placing the blame on any one person or any one group of people is not recognizing the situation. Situations take a lot of people to create them and a lot of people to begin to fix them. And I think we're willing to do that. I just don't think it's going to happen immediately. And I think the other couple of pieces that I have to say, because I had several things I wanted to say when I was at that group. One of the things that we tried to give them for information that was we would do our best to see if we could address this by referring it to the right people whenever possible. And I think at least part of our planning with requests is at one of the next meetings, we're going to have Heather, the food service person here. I think that's a great place to give her their suggestions about the food. I think we're going to have Heath here to talk about the facilities. That's a great place to give him their suggestions about the facilities. I think it's just a beginning, and it may be the minor things. But to be perfectly honest, the group I was in was big on the food. And that's important to middle schoolers. That's not minor. If kids feel that they're not getting enough food or the right kind of food that they want to eat lunch, we probably should ask them questions or refer them to the person who could. But I think it's just a process. And I think we need to keep it the process, and I think we need to recognize that there are certain things we need to change or do better. But I don't want to think we're going to throw in the towel, so to speak. Tommy.
I joined this committee because I love my community and I love the fact that I can make a change for my kids as they're in the community. The elephant for me in the room is I don't care about somebody clapping me or liking me, okay? The elephant in the room is the fact that the community doesn't trust you because you don't listen. That's what the elephant in the room is. And that's why people get frustrated. Because all of a sudden, I get that. That's not your experience. My experience is, especially as somebody of color, as somebody who worked in the district before, I know this. We get there and they have this public comment, like you said, Teresa says, if you talk about bullying, really, like the civil rights thing, all of a sudden it just disappeared in the air. Like you don't feel heard. I'm sorry, but my middle schoolers don't care about lunch. They're in the lunch for a little piece and then they move on. The bullying thing is a big issue. That's something that you have to respond to. Not something that said, you know what, that's not our responsibility. Excuse me, yes, it is your responsibility. Because if they said Michael Sullivan is throwing dirt on the wall and he's peeing in the corner, that's our responsibility to investigate it and find out. And the fact is, we're not doing that. That's why the committee is sitting there like, you know what, why am I sitting there talking to you? Because you keep saying, you know what, it's not part of our job. I'm sorry,
but can someone say that? No one has, I personally have never heard anyone say it's not my thing. I've never said it's just financial, and I've never heard anyone
I'm telling you what the
say
community
it,
is saying.
to be clear.
You're talking about the climate in the community, that's what they're hearing.
Lack of trust.
It is, it's a lack of trust, and that's what they're hearing. Because again, we're like, you know, what do we want to do? The first thing you said, and I get that it's something small in lunch. Enough. Let's talk about the real stuff. What happened to the civil rights?
What do you mean? We have a whole process. We have we have a huge training. We have a whole new.
You had people coming in here making public comment. You have complaints, you have this, and then they just disappear. That's why people feel that they're not being heard. That's why. That's why people sit there, why do you want me to come forward and say something when you're like, you know what, you need to follow proper channels? We did. Did we as a committee say, you know what, they just said they followed the proper channels? Did we double check and make sure? No, because we're going to put our trust there. So you want to talk about the climate? That's the climate. Our community is telling us that we're not being heard. Your students, I'm so sick to death of seeing this because I've heard it since my kids came into 6th grade. They're saying the same things over and over again. Jen Renahan, actually the 8th grade team is phenomenal. They listen. But then what happens after that? Where does it go?
Here. And that's why we're trying to move it forward.
Yeah, I get that, but then we can't sit here and say, I don't understand why the committee is so, they don't trust us. Because you've shown this. They hear what you say, but then they see your actions. And your actions, I'm sorry, but you want to know what? My kids are not going to Turner's Falls High School because they have not been listened to. That's why, they have not been listened to. Concerns about staff bias. To me, that's skating on legal stuff. We gotta listen, not just saying, you know what, yes, absolutely we're gonna go through the process. That's what we have policies in place, we need to do that. But we need to do a better job with giving that confidence back to the community, saying we're gonna do everything in our power. Not, you know what, let's go through, yes, we're gonna go through the proper channels, but I'm gonna fight for you anyway because you are my community. I live here. Despite the fact that the stuff that we've gone through in the district, this is still my community. I still decided to run when no one else wanted to run.
Well, let's have this conversation because that's what keeps happening. We keep circling around. So can someone explain to me how we're not being heard, but we have the whole teaching tolerance social justice training day. We have the whole new community, I don't know why, I can't find it. The equity and civil rights. Committee. Yes, that not enough people have even applied for.
Where are the comments from the surveys? Did we ever get those?
What do you mean?
We had surveys that gone out to families about what was going on. There were comments about did the committee ever get that?
I believe we did. Didn't we get all the comments?
Yes, there was.
And then what?
So
can I let Heather finish first and then?
No, it's all right. I don't, we're doing things, but they're not being seen is also the other part of it. We can't do it immediately. We are taking steps. I feel like we have been making some huge steps and trying to get so much community input, creating this thing, creating a new position that, yes, is only half time, but we don't have the money. That sucks. It sucks in so many ways because we don't have the money for so many things. I just don't see how the things that we are doing don't get any just some recognition. I understand it's not enough. I know it's not enough. We have to start somewhere. But it's always shot down. Everything we do is shot down from the second it starts. Why are no people joining? Probably because everyone's already complaining about how it's not going to do anything. So how do you get out of this cycle where we're trying and we need people to get involved, but then no one's talking anything positive, so no one wants to get involved? I don't know what to do. I don't know. We're trying. We are literally trying. So many of the meetings we have been about it and creating things and spending $5,000 on this training and we are doing what we can piece by piece.
Bill?
Did Michael want to?
Oh, I'm sorry, Michael, yeah.
Well, sticking to the narrow piece of the equity work, since issues came up around the holidays, we dropped what we were doing for PD, for faculty at the high school, and that's been changed. We've revisited our policies around student behaviors and reinforced expectations with kids. We have we've brought in outsiders immediately to hear from the community and to share it right there what they heard, and outgrowth of that was this equity committee. So we're all on every facet of this. It's become front and center work.
Did I see?
No.
Okay, Bill and then Jen and then Jason.
I can't be angry with any of, or reactionary to any of the discussion, but I do think that there's a lot of validity in the the notion that this is systemic outside of this system. And we can pass all the policies we want, and we can do all the investigations we want and collect numbers. But if you collect all the numbers, then what do you do to educate those people that you're wanting to segregate out? And you have to, and also the notion of not wanting to participate. I'm ecstatic that I got elected to this committee. I was happy to volunteer when the previous member resigned. And I don't expect any reward for it. I'm doing this because this is what I like to do. And I'm not being complacent about any of it. I have grandchildren that are very concerned, their parents are very concerned about how they're going to be received in any community where they're going to choose to live. They live in New York City, which is an extravaganza of diversity. It's wonderful to visit New York in that respect. You can't look anywhere without seeing somebody that's very different from yourself. But, you know, Heather, you have tremendous aspirations for the good of the community, and I think there's a lot of people in the community that have aspirations for us to succeed as well, but we just don't always hear from them. And it's nice to, whoever we do hear from, I at least pay attention to what they're saying, and whether I can respond or not sometimes to me is I can't go and sit at somebody else's breakfast table and try to interact with them to get them to be a different person than they are. That has to come from them. And I think a lot of this negativity is, although it's consistent over time, it's not new, but it doesn't necessarily reflect everybody out in the community either. And to that extent, I think we can keep working as slowly as we do. Maybe we are snails, but at least we're trying to move forward and do something. And the fact that you can't necessarily see it outside of this meeting speaks to the fact that we're not micromanaging in every school. We do rely on the administrators in particular to lead the whole system, but it's also the individual teachers, it's those children that are under the teachers, and it goes back to the families of those children. And trying to impact all of that, I think, is beyond the scope of the committee. But we can certainly try to educate so that the next generation does a better job.
Jen?
A lot of what we're talking about is very important, but I think that for our meetings, you know, we need to stick with what we need to get accomplished tonight. But I think we're having a working meeting coming up, and maybe that's where we could bring ideas of how we can better communicate. We brought up last meeting, I was concerned that folks coming don't necessarily know what happens after they come and talk to us. They don't hear, well, we did this and then we did this, and like there's things that have been happening throughout the year, but they came to the one meeting and, you know, they're finding out what's in the newspaper. They maybe or may not be watching the meetings, but there's no way for them to really know how we have addressed their concern throughout the year. So maybe we have to do something better to get that information out, and maybe that's a conversation to have in our working meeting of how we can do better with that.
Thank you. I think, did I see another hand here, or Teresa?
I come from a different perspective because the kids that are coming to Turner's are coming from a different school system. I do not find in Irving Elementary what you're talking about, Jane. Our population is the same as you'd find in Gill or in Montague. Well, but I mean, ours is a lower income, actually, in Irving than a lot of the people in Gill Montague. I've looked at the statistics and things like that. The school support, I've been in the town for 40 years. We've had different administrators, we've had different principals, we've had different school committees. That is not, what you're talking about, the cultural out there, is not happening in our school. All the events are well attended, and so I don't think it's necessarily a cultural thing out there. What I have seen consistently in the 40-some-odd years that I have been in Irving is the kind of accountability that I'm talking about, where people, if there is a problem, and there have been problems, all schools have problems, but they get the problem defined and they get the problem solved and they make it clear how they're going to do it. And that, I think, is the difference from what I have seen on this committee and what I experience in Irving. I don't think it is something extraordinary to ask your administrators on all your schools. They are the CEOs of your schools, basically. They establish the culture of the schools. And Dr. Sullivan establishes the culture of the district. They should be willing to talk about, in accountability terms, in concrete terms, having a session, having someone come in and teach this does not necessarily produce the results that you're talking about. But you just saying, well, we've had somebody come in and teach about this topic without having verifiable results, that this month we've seen a decrease in this activity, or we've seen a positive increase here or there, would do a lot for people out there. And by word of mouth, they would be able to say, well, there was a problem last month, but it's gone down. The numbers have gone down.
Thank you.
So that we have that data, and that will be on the agenda when things wrap up. It's even, I think, planned for next meeting along with the Power Town grant about how things are going with all of those different categories related to bullying and different types of incidents. So I think that's a good idea to bring that, and not just from the middle and high school, but from the other schools.
Jimmy?
Thank you, Jane. I don't know, I kind of think as I listening to everybody, taking notes, that, I don't know, I come at this as a school committee member from a different perspective. I'm out to support my community. I'm out to listen to my community. I think that the role that I play in a school committee is, one, in policy development, and two, in finance. And I feel that this is statutorily pretty much my responsibility. I don't feel that it is my responsibility to micromanage the schools. We choose, and as it was pointed out, certain administrators, the superintendent, the SPED director, the business manager, our attorney, yes, doctor and nurses. I'm sorry, I'll get my paper and then I won't see hands trying to get knowledge. I've been quiet. I'm going to take people's time for a minute more. I'm sorry. I'll look here and hands up like this. I'm not going to see. It just totally blows my mind, and that's me, and I apologize to everybody in the room for responding to it that way, but that's just me. I have devoted innumerable hours on the finance side, trying to get the monies that the district needs, that our superintendent needs. to work with the school, get the good teachers in here that we have, that are devoted and dedicated, the administrators that are working hard. Hours and hours and hours. Our town meeting's late this year. I couldn't count the number of meetings I've gone to in the last, since we met here last, just on finance, to prepare for that meeting, town meeting on Monday. It looks like it's going to be, it's a town meeting, so you never know, but I hope it will be short and to the point, and that the district will get the support from Gill voters that attend the town meeting to have a budget that they can work with. I don't know. I don't see my responsibility as micromanaging. I used to teach, and then I had a role, a different, entirely different role in the system as a teacher. Those years are gone. Maybe these years should be gone too. On that, I'll be quiet and turn the meeting back. Thank you, Jane, for the time. I'm sorry for taking so long.
I just want to point out that finance and policy is not just what we do. If others choose to devote that, that's great. You know, there's some things that I'm not well versed on in finance. I'll look to see what they say. But that is our employee. Dr. Sullivan is our employee. So I think that it's important that we ask these questions. We ask some very pointed questions, you know, and it's a real concern for our community. And we would be derelict in our duties if we didn't ask these questions. It is our job. Some may think it's micromanaging. I think it's no, we need to make sure that our kids are protected. I have kids in this district. My kids have been in this district for years. And it's not just my responsibility, is what I need to do. So it's not just policy and it's not just finance. And that's one of the things that I've heard a lot of our community members come to us and say, we keep getting told that, you know, we just do policy and finance. No, not really. Because we do need to make sure that he's doing his job. We do need to make sure when there's a concern, the stuff that is in here, and again, I go back to the fact that what's on the agenda, we're talking about what these 8th grade students did in there are phenomenal, and like I said, I'm biased, but these are real concerns that will turn into a liability for the district. And that is something that we need to take a look at and just say, we need to deal with this now.
I think this discussion naturally went from the list. I think it went into things that people are interested in. I understand that.
Sorry.
But I think, no, I think it's important, and it's the reason I didn't stop it. I think we need to have discussions. I think what's challenging is for each of us to try our best to state our own views and not assume that we understand someone else's view. I think everyone is entitled to make their own statement, however they see what they feel and what they understand. I think that's really an important thing to do, and I think it's a good way to enable everyone to enter the conversation, to make sure that we're all listening, we're all expressing our own opinions for ourselves. I think that's important. And if no one has anything else to talk about on the 8th grade list, Mike?
Real quick, just because I hope that they'll be monitoring and following up. And it's a big list, and we're going to have to find a way to manage it. But it occurred to me through that for me, sort of the important piece is now we've started to develop a budding relationship. We've got a conversation with some folks, and I want to, just for my own sake, find a way to keep that going, keep developing that relationship. Sort of one of the things that's missing is relationships. We come from positions and not from, you don't sort of do the, people-y thing and talk about stuff. So developing relationships between the administration and the teachers, between teachers and students, between students and us, between us and all that. That's what I'm going to concentrate on, aside from our collective work, maintaining that relationship.
Kathy?
I know I shouldn't keep it going, but I can't. It's a filter. So, I always say budget and policy because it's important that we stay on that. And I don't want to micromanage anybody. Like I said, I was very cautious with the class size discussion. I don't want anyone to think that we're trying to juggle things around.
And I never make it about my kids, but they're all my kids. I see them all. And I see declines in our school that do not make me happy. And that's 2 years after being on this committee. And the only agenda item I had when I came on this committee was to improve our schools in any way I could. Like, I didn't have one specific thing. I just wanted to make them better. And that's why it's so upsetting to me, even though it's budget and policy, and I don't want to micromanage anybody, and I don't want anyone to feel like we're looking over their shoulder, like, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? What? But we have to remember, like, this isn't just data. These are humans, and these are people's children, and there's families leaving. And, if your business is running well, you don't worry about it, right? You don't worry about it. If your business is losing money, you better figure out what the heck's going on. And I think, like, that's where we're at.
Heather, did I see you anything?
I just wanted to know if we had, I guess we're just leaving it at, we'll take it piece by piece. We'll have Heath and Heather in.
Do people want to indicate what they'd like to have, what else they'd like to have on the next agenda? I'm more than open. Last time we had a lot of agenda items people suggested, and I think that's very helpful. It did take up a lot of the meeting, but that's perfectly fine if that's what the members want.
Can I continue for just one second?
Yep.
Sorry. So equity and discipline has definitely, that came up with when we were seeing the high school students as well, and now we're seeing with the middle school students.
Mhm.
And so that is something that me, as a school committee member, would like to, I don't know how we do it, but I would like to start maybe with looking into that one as a committee a little bit more, because we have some other people, I think, who can help us with some of the other pieces. I think we're starting with the student voice. The racially diverse staff is going to be a tricky one for us to deal with, but we should look into research and see what we can do about that. But I think equity and discipline is something we can start to plug away at, that the kids are really seeing, and maybe could make just a big, maybe some small things could make a big, because maybe everything, not all, there's someone who has to oversee it all, but, if we have all the right stuff in the handbooks, then maybe we can just figure out how we can not overwhelm anybody, but try to keep it accountable. I think that would have a big impact.
Okay, Michael?
So 2 concrete things I wanted to mention. When we visited Jen's class, I brought up with the kids right then on the spot, how about if your student council got into these more substantive things and you met regularly with the administration? I think that's like the shortest distance between a couple of these points that we can close with a new team coming in. And that was the second thing I wanted to mention. I'm meeting Thursday for 2 hours with Joni, and then the following week for 2 hours, and she's starting to meet with the rest of the team. And so clearly this work about consistency in our disciplinary system and school culture is going to be front and center for the work we ask of her, but we also will have a new assistant principal and a new dean of students. So it's real opportunity to kind of shift things considerably, and have them have a fresh start. And I think we're going to have our ducks in a row in a pretty good way for that.
Okay. Jen?
Well, we had already mentioned that, like, Heath is coming. We can talk a little bit about facilities that night. And Heather, I thought that was a really good idea. And also, some of these things at the bottom of the page are policies that we could add to our list to review, and then get reported back on the planning throughout the summer with the new staff, and how we can talk to more students in the fall. Because of course school is ending.
We can plan ahead. Yeah, thank you. Okay. The next item is teacher evaluation process and mentoring. That's a presentation. That was another request. So you have a large packet here about that process. The educator evaluation system is here in its entirety, I believe.
Yeah, the outline of it.
Yes.
I don't think it makes sense right now to read every slide.
Right, but I mean, it is there.
But I could explain a couple of key points. Yeah, which is just that the system for teachers is similar to the one for me that you find onerous, and there's a whole lot of elements and standards. There's 4 of them, and then there's goals related to professional practice, and there's goals related to student learning that every educator has. And if we had more time and you were interested, I would tell you about the types of data, the types of conversations, the types of feedback that goes on between evaluators and teachers. That's kind of at the heart of the process, but the information's there, and if you want to ask any specific questions about it, I'd be glad to answer those, another time, or have a meeting with you individually or whatever.
And there's also the mentoring program information is there too. Haley, did you have a question or
I have a
comment?
specific question about the evaluation process.
Okay.
I saw a plan for PTS educators, so tenure is PTS.
Yeah,
professional teacher, yes,
Yeah.
that's been the new.
If there was a needs improvement, there's a plan for that. So what's the plan for non-PTS educators if there's a needs improvement?
It's similar. There's a developing educator plan, and then there's an improvement plan.
It's a couple
A
of pages
two-step
ahead of the
process.
I don't think it's in here as specifically for non-PTS educators. So
No, I was looking for that too. It is in there.
it is?
At least it wasn't the electronic one. But yes, it's the same, it just has a different heading. The improvement plan. Oops, Daisy.
Oh, just my name.
I mean, these are just, this isn't the contract language,
Don't
which
like
is very
it anyway.
detailed. So I can bring that back to you, as opposed to, these are just, overview slides, so.
And because it is a large packet, if the committee wishes, we can put it on a future meeting and have questions specifically about it whenever you want to.
I have tons of questions. Maybe it can go on to another meeting agenda, but I want to ask this now because it's on tonight's agenda. Who's the meeting coordinator for the district? Sorry, the mentor coordinator?
There's two. It's Amanda Helgerson and Craig Tully share it.
And they're both middle school, right? Okay.
There's no one at the elementary level, sorry.
So there's
It's usually just one person
It's
for
not,
the whole
they're not
district.
mentors, it's
I
the
get-
coordinator job.
right.
Oh, okay, sorry.
And
To
it
maybe
says,
mentors.
it says here, administrators are required training on mentoring for all administrators. Are all administrators trained on mentoring? I'm looking at the mentoring program training. What, it says administrator, I
This
don't know
one,
what
the-
page it is. It's all over the place.
I don't know
This sheet right here.
Oh, thank you.
Okay.
from the handbook.
I'm assuming he's from the handbook. It looks familiar because it looks like one that Marty kind of put together. So the coordinators are responsible for overseeing the training of administrators, is that?
No.
Okay, that's, the way that it looks, it's really weird.
Oh, yes, it
So
does.
what,
My question is, are all administrators trained in this mentoring program?
no, I think what this is about is that new administrators need to be mentored as well, like new
Okay, so,
teachers.
Oh, they just left out the word new. Did you have something else, Tommy, before we?
yeah, no, sorry, no, you go.
No, okay.
I'm gonna
Cassie?
finish writing.
No, I just think it's important too to make the connection that mentors are not, they don't do any rating, and legally, they're not even allowed to share with the administrator or the evaluator anything that they find, right? So the two are completely separate. Like, the mentor is just there to help guide. But that being said, I think, oh, and I lost my page, there's so much info. I think it's important too that there's some sort of accountability for the administrators that are doing the evaluation to make sure that it's 100%. The same way we would expect new teachers or any teacher doing a binder or filling out their evaluation, they have to check the boxes. I think our administrators as well need to make sure that they're doing that, and again, not to micromanage, but just that there's some sort of an accountability there for them as well.
Tommy?
I've been asked also about evaluator changes. I know that I've been done in my district where you have your evaluation that's done the first year, and the second year you request a different evaluator. That's something that is available to teachers, correct?
They can always make that request. Yeah, we don't have to honor it, and sometimes it's not a good idea. Sometimes it's an impractical idea if it is asked for in a very small district.
Marty used to do it all the time.
What did he used to do? all the
Request
time?
that he would actually be the second evaluator.
Yeah, a second evaluator is different than a different evaluator.
No, they would ask to be evaluated by someone else. So he would come in and serve in that role.
Okay, and what was his position? He was
Marty?
Director of Teaching and Learning.
Yes, Director of Teaching and Learning.
We don't have a full-time.
We don't have that position.
No, I get that, I'm saying, but the possibility of them doing that is a past practice.
What would be a reason that you would deny, I mean, I don't know a reason that a teacher would ask for another evaluator, but what would be a reason that it would be denied? Like, would it be a time frame, we don't have anyone available, or if there's certain, you need to have a certain license to complete the evaluation? I don't know if that's, I mean, if you're
It
at
would be very
Hillcrest and
specific,
Sarah's the only one that
very
can do the
contextual.
evaluation.
It would be very specific to the situation.
Okay.
But would people like that on the next agenda, so that if people have further questions, or wait a meeting or two, whatever you like? Okay?
I have one
Mike?
question
Yeah.
about the mentoring program. It says new teachers, but elsewhere in the policies and throughout, I've seen teachers from other districts or other locations who have been teachers already are treated differently, or are they?
Yes, I put that in the memo I wrote with my Sunday night to you, explaining that. So
I highlighted it somewhere. I was just going to give you that info, because I did find it.
Yeah, I have it right here.
Yeah.
So anyway, the expectation now is that new teachers get mentored in 2 years, regardless of the district they're in. And then when they go to a new district, they don't get mentors. Some districts might provide them and some don't. We have a very hard time providing enough mentors to our new teachers, and so as a rule, we don't provide mentors, official mentors, to veteran teachers who are new to the district.
So does that depend on where they come from? Would you
No.
say a teacher that comes from out of state would get the same treatment as somebody coming from Greenfield? That's what you're saying, like a longtime teacher.
Yes.
So I mean that doesn't. I would just worry that, say a teacher came from New Jersey and was a complete train wreck. Are the students suffering because of that? I just worry, I feel like being new. Well, I mean, if they were, you never know. But what I'm saying is, I would just worry about, because every school has a different culture and different policies and different ways of doing things. So I would just worry about, any adverse effect it could have on students if you did bring in a teacher that didn't have that mentorship, and it cost kids a year. I would hate to see that would have been something that could have happened. On the flip side.
I guess that's my more pointed question. New teachers new to the district, whether they've been teaching for 1 year or 20. Teachers new to the district, are they not provided in some capacity, some form of mentor? Because it's a cultural thing too. You need to know what the systems are. What process is in place for that? Other than the first week of that first week or first day or so, I think the new staff comes in. What's beyond that? What sort of, if it's not called mentoring because they're not a brand new teacher to the profession, what's in place for them to be able to come in and say, all right, here you go. So
it depends on what it is you think they need to learn, but they work with grade level or subject area colleagues. So that's where they would learn some of the daily stuff, and then they also get feedback from their evaluator, because that relationship is supposed to be largely collegial and first collegial and supportive. So both of those things.
So I know that mentors have to have a license number with DESE as a mentor. It's not just something oh, this is Janet, she's been here 12
There's
years.
a training they have to do.
Yeah, there's a training. So,
and we provide that.
Oh, we do. Okay, so it's not a case of there's one mentor in the building and we, unfortunately
we
okay,
provide
that's not a
periodically.
problem. Okay.
Yeah.
So it seems like people would like that on the next agenda. We can put that on and bring more questions. Anything else on it for now?
No, but as part of it, and I'm not sure that there's anything to report on this, but our approach to teacher retention, yeah, sorry. I'll work on it and communicate in between.
Okay, and we will have it on the next agenda.
Yeah.
It seems like that's a good idea.
Thank you.
Jane, you mentioned earlier this evening about having, or someone did, about having a working session.
Yes, we have it.
And when we do, if I could know the date, that might help because I don't think it's on my calendar, which may be my fault. But some of these topics that you have from your 8th grade meeting with the students, such as the facilities or the food, might lend themselves more for a meeting, a section of our regular school committee meeting where the lead person in the department is here talking to us and we can point out things and discuss them. And I think some of these topics are more in-depth, and I think that maybe they would lend themselves initially to a working session, and that, let's say you, Jane, Heather, and talking to Dr. Sullivan might decide that it might be helpful at that working session. Maybe not the first one, maybe 2 working sessions on one of the topics if you want to dig deep, to have some of the administrative team come and talk to us, and in a room that we can sit and talk and quasi-relax and have an in-depth discussion. I think it may lend itself more to that, and then after we grapple with it, then maybe bring it up into the regular school committee meeting where we can touch upon it more quickly and the public knows what is going to, the community knows what's going to happen.
Right now, we have a working session on July 2nd at 5:30 in the evening. That's the one we decided on for the summer.
We're only going to have one?
Well, that's because
Just the
the others are
working
regular
session.
meetings.
Yeah.
I mean, we have a regular meeting at the end of June, another one in July, 2 in August. You can have more if you want them. Say the word.
Every Tuesday?
Yeah, sure. Maybe out of town once in a while, but that's okay. Good suggestion.
I do have it, Jane. Thank
Okay,
you.
thanks. I just want to make sure everybody had it. Actually, I was glad you mentioned it. If we can move on to the Summer Institute informational, there is a form here if anyone is interested in attending that. I think it's something that, if anyone does indicate they want to, I think the committee needs to decide that that's something we're willing to vote that will be reimbursed for people, or often at these, it can be signed up through Sabrina's office, and it can be paid by the district. Tommy, did you have a question about that?
Actually, I would like to suggest that we have MASC come out to the district. I know we've done in the past where we've sort of had them come out to, not a train, yeah, more of like a training to the district, or even a refresher, because we have some new members, some members who've been here for a while, just come up with like 10 topics. Some of the stuff I saw in Summer Institute was like, oh, I'd like that, but I don't want to see that, so I would rather not be sitting there for at least a day or two and like get half out of it.
Right. MASC.
And I know we've done it before.
Yes,
Yeah.
MASC, there are certain topics that they will come out and speak
Right.
on. I don't know if they, I would have to look at the current list.
Sure.
And who's available when. And then I believe in the past, you have to have a certain number of people sign up. Because often what we've done, we've had it around this area. Actually, we had it in the school at one time, and
It was in the central office.
Excuse me?
I think we had them up at the central office.
Actually, we had one in the cafeteria, too, where they came out along with a lawyer. But I think they need a certain number of people to sign up, so then the idea is to present it to other districts as well, to try to get enough people that they will bring it out here. Is there a suggestion of when people might like that scheduled?
I don't know, I just want to see if that was possible.
Okay, I could ask. I know they have some charting the course ones scheduled in different areas of the state. They just don't always get very close to here. That's the one they're most interested in scheduling, is charting the course for new members. Although I've taken it as a senior member and still learned a lot from it. It really works pretty well. Jen?
Well, I think that this would be helpful with the decisions that we're going to be making going forward and the work that's starting to get implemented. With the equity committee, there's going to be recommendations that we're going to need to make decisions on. And I think that the topics are extremely relevant, and I would be willing to put the time in and go if the committee thinks that they want to approve it.
Okay. So if, and we do have funds for this sort of thing in the
Oh,
school
yeah.
committee line item.
Yep.
Definitely. So if any members are interested, usually there's a date by which they want people to register. I don't see it on this stuff, but we could find out if there's a particular date by which time they need people to register. But I'm
potentially interested as
okay.
well.
So maybe, I guess, the bigger question is, I will entertain a motion to approve whether, I don't know if we want to call it reimbursement or just paying for this.
Yeah, paying for it.
I think it's better to just pay for it so you don't have to get reimbursed. It's when it's the workshops.
Oh, and you can do either day.
Yes, you can do
Which is
Friday
nice.
or Saturday.
It's nice that it's in Marlboro.
Right, Marlboro at least is like about an hour and 15 minutes with decent traffic.
So
Yeah.
moved.
Okay. Mike moves that we pay for a workshop for any school committee member who'd like to attend. Do I have a second? Second. Heather seconded. All those in favor? Anyone? Okay, that's unanimous. So is the best way to go through Sabrina probably to register for that? So if anyone is interested, yeah. Timmy, bless you.
I think also, and I think it requires a vote of the school committee members. Some people choose instead of, and you, I haven't gone to the MSC's down Cape or anything, but choose not to have meals at the thing, but to eat out or something, that there is an opportunity for reimbursement for that. Plus, they get reimbursed for travel mileage. And
yes,
that is done by, I think, school committee vote prior to the
Okay.
occurrence.
Do you think that needs to be a separate?
And I just assume make a motion to reimburse for
mileage.
food and mileage.
Okay. I believe in this one, food is included, it isn't separated out. Usually it is with the big conferences, you can opt or not opt. This one, I think it's contained within the price.
And it looks like you drive down and drive back rather than
Right.
hotel.
And I think they're only giving you like a snack, probably. But I think the mileage is a good point, because, and that's important to keep track of. I believe it's the mileage according to Google Maps, I think. Joanne, there's a specific one we're supposed to use. We can find out for people. But we have a motion on the floor to pay,
reimburse
mileage.
Second.
Second as well. Cassie, thank you. All those in favor? Thank you, unanimous. Okay, thanks for bringing that to our attention, Jen. And last item is approval of minutes from May 28th.
So moved. Move to approve.
Okay, Mike moves. Second. Heather seconds. Any discussion? Questions? All those in favor? Any opposed? Okay, unanimously passed. Thank you. Any other agenda requests? Let us know, please. We'll probably be doing agenda planning next Monday as usual. Let us know.
Did you get a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn is the next one. Bill, would you like to make that?
I do.
And Heather, seconded. All right, those in favor? May we?